Hello. I am going to read chapter 7 today. I'm here at school packing stuff up and prepping and getting stuff ready. So I thought I'd just take a break and read chapter 7. Here we go. The shovel felt heavy in Stanley's soft, fleshy hands. He tried to jam it into the earth, but the blade banged against the ground and bounced off without making a dent. The vibrations ran up the shaft of the shovel and into Stanley's wrists, making his bones rattle. It was still dark. The only light came from the moon and the stars, more stars than Stanley had ever seen before. It seemed that he had just only gotten to sleep when Mr. Pendanski came in and woke everyone up. Using all his might, he brought the shovel back down to the dry lake bed. The force stung his hands, but Nate made no impression in the earth. He wondered if he had a defective shovel. He glanced at Zero, about 15 feet away, who scooped out a shovelful of dirt and dumped it in a pile that was already almost a foot tall. For breakfast, they had been served some kind of lukewarm cereal. The best part was the orange juice. They each got a pint carton. The cereal actually didn't taste too bad, but it had smelled just like his cot. When they filled their canteens, got their shovels, and they were marched out to the lake. Each group was assigned a different area. The shovels were kept in a shed near the showers. They all looked the same to Stanley, although X-Ray had his own special shovel, which no one else was allowed to use. X-Ray claimed that it was shorter than the others, but if it was only by a fraction of an inch. The shovels were 5 feet long, from the tip of the steel blade to the end of the wooden shaft. Stanley's hole would have to be as deep as the shovel, and it would have to be able to lay the shovel flat across the bottom in any direction. That was why X-Ray wanted the shortest shovel. The lake was so full of holes and mounds that reminded Stanley of a picture that he'd seen of the moon. "If you find anything interesting or unusual," Mr. Pendanski had told him, "you should report it to either me or Mr. Sir when we come around with the water truck. If the warden likes what you found, you'll get the rest of the day off." "What are we supposed to be looking for?" Stanley asked him. "You're not looking for anything. You're digging to build character. It's just if you find anything, the warden would like to know about it." He glanced helplessly at his shovel. It wasn't defective. He was defective. He noticed a thin crack in the ground. He placed the point at the shovel on the top of it and then jumped back on the blade with both feet. The shovel sank into a few inches into the packed earth. He smiled. For once in his life, it paid to be overweight. He leaned on the shaft and pried his first shovel full of dirt, then dumped it off to the side. Only 10 million more to go, he thought, then placed the shovel back in the crack and jumped on it again. He unearthed several shovelfuls of dirt in this manner, before it occurred to him that he was dumping his dirt within the perimeter of his hole. He laid his shovel flat on the ground, marking the edges of where his hole would be. 5 feet was awfully wide. He moved the dirt he'd already dug out past his mark. He took a drink from his canteen. 5 feet would be awfully deep, too. The digging got easier after a while. The ground was the hardest at the surface, where the sun had baked the crust about 8 inches deep. Beneath that, the earth was looser. But by the time Stanley broke past the crust, a blister had formed in the middle of his thumb, and it hurt to hold the shovel. Stanley's great-great-grandfather was named Elya Yelnats. He was born in Latvia. He was about 15 years old when he fell in love with Myra Menke. He did not know he was Stanley's great-great-grandfather. Myra Menke was 14. She would turn 15 in 2 months, and at which time her father had to decide who she should marry. Elya wanted her father to ask her father for her hand, but so did Igor Barkov, the pig farmer. Igor was 57 years old. He had a red nose and fat, puffy cheeks. "I will trade you my fattest pig for your daughter," Igor offered. "Well, what have you got, what have you got?" Myra's father asked Elya. "A heart full of love," said Elya. "I'd rather have a fat pig," said Myra's father. Despite Elya, he went to see Madame Zeroni, an old Egyptian woman who lived at the edge of town. He had become friends with her, though she was quite a bit older than him. She was even older than Igor Barkov. The other boys of this village liked to mud wrestle. Elya preferred visiting Madame Zeroni and listened to her many stories. Madame Zeroni had dark skin and a very wide mouth. When she looked at you, her eyes seemed to expand and felt like she was looking right through you. "Elya, what's What's wrong? She asked. But before he even told her that he was upset, she was sitting in a homemade wheelchair. She had no left foot. Her leg had stopped at the ankle. I am in love with Myra Menke, Elya confessed, but Igor Barkov has offered to trade him this fattest pig for her. I can't compete with that. Good, said Madame Zeroni. You are too young to get married. You've got your whole life ahead of you. But I love Myra. Myra's head is as empty as a flower pot. But she is beautiful. So she is a flower pot. Can she push a plow? Can she milk a goat? Can she... No, she is too delicate. Can she have an intelligent conversation? No, she is silly and foolish. Will she take care of you when you're sick? No, she is spoiled and will only want you to take care of her. So she is beautiful. So what? Patoo! Madame Zeroni spat on the dirt. So she told Elya that he should go to America. Like my son, where your future lies, not with Myra Menke. But Elya would hear none of that. He was 15 and all he could see was Myra's shallow beauty. Madame Zeroni hated to see Elya so forlorn. Against her better judgment, she agreed to help him. It just so happens that my sow gave birth to a litter of piglets yesterday. This is the only little runt whom she won't suckle. You may have him, but he would die anyway. Madame Zeroni led Elya around the back of her house and gave him one of her pigs. Elya took the tiny piglet, but didn't see what good it would do him. It wasn't much bigger than a rat. He will grow, Madame Zeroni assured him. Do you see the mountain at the edge of the forest? Yes. On the top of the mountain is a stream where the water runs uphill. You must carry the piglet every day to the top of the mountain and let it drink from the stream. As it drinks, you are to sing to him. She taught Elya the special song to sing to the pig. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, you should carry the pig up the mountain for the last time. Then take it directly to Myra's father. It will be fatter than any of Igor's pigs. If it is that big and fat, how am I able to carry it up the mountain? The piglet is not too heavy for you now, is it? Asked Madame Zeroni. Of course not, said Elya. Do you think it will be too heavy for you tomorrow? No. Every day you will carry the pig up the mountain. It will be a little bigger and you will be a little stronger. After you give the pig to Myra's father, I want you to do one more thing for me. Anything, said Elya. I want you to carry me up the mountain. I want to drink from the stream, and I want you to sing the song to me. Elya promised he would. Madame Zeroni warned that if he failed to do this, he and his descendants would be doomed for all eternity. At the time, Elya thought nothing of the curse. He was just a 15-year-old kid, and eternity didn't seem much longer than a week from Tuesday. Besides, he liked Madame Zeroni and would be glad to carry her up the mountains. He would have done it right then and there, but he wasn't strong enough yet. Stanley was still digging. His hole was about 3 feet deep, but only in the center. It sloped upward along the edges. The sun had only just come up over the horizon, but he already could feel the hot rays against his face. As he reached down to pick up his canteen, he felt a sudden rush of dizziness, and he put his hands on his knees to steady himself. For a moment, he was afraid that he would throw up, but the moment passed. He drank the last drop of water from his canteen. He had blisters on every one of his fingers and one on the center of each palm. Everyone else's hole was a lot deeper than his. He couldn't actually see their holes, but he could tell by the size of their dirt piles. He saw a cloud of dust moving across the wasteland and noticed that the other boys had stopped digging and were watching it too. The dirt cloud moved closer, and he could see that it trailed behind a red pickup truck. The truck stopped near where they were digging, and the boys lined up behind it. X-ray in front, Zero at the rear. Stanley got in line behind Zero. Mr. Sir filled their canteens from the tank of water at the bed of the pickup truck. As he took Stanley's canteen from him, he said, "This ain't the Girl Scouts, is it?" Stanley raised and lowered one shoulder. Mr. Sir followed Stanley back to his hole to see how he was doing. "You better get with it, or else you'll be digging in the hottest part of the day." He popped some sunflower seeds into his mouth, deftly removed the shells with his teeth, and spat them into Stanley's hole. Every day, Elya carried the little piglet up the mountain and sang to it as it drank from the stream. As the pig grew fatter and Elya grew stronger. On the day of Myra's 15th birthday, Elya's pig weighed over 50 stones. Madame Zeroni had told him to carry the pig up the mountain on that day as well, but Elya didn't want to present himself to Myra smelling like a pig. Instead, he took a bath, and it was his second bath in less than a week. Then he led the pig to Myra's. Igor Barkov was also there with his pig as well. "These are the 2 finest pigs I've ever seen," Myra's father declared. He was so impressed with Elya, who seemed to have grown bigger and stronger in the last 2 months. "I used to think you were a good-for-nothing book reader," he said, "but I see now that you are an excellent mud wrestler." "May I marry your daughter?" Elya boldly asked. "First I must weigh the pigs." Alas, poor Elya should have carried his pig up the mountain one last time. The 2 pigs weighed exactly the same. Stanley's blisters had ripped open and new blisters formed. He kept changing his grip on the shovel to try avoid the pain. Finally, he removed his cap and held it between the shaft of his shovel and his raw hands. This helped, but digging was harder because the cap would slip and slide. The sun beat down on his unprotected head and neck. Though he tried to convince himself otherwise, he'd been aware for a while that his piles of dirt were too close to his hole. The piles were outside his 5-foot circle, but he could see that he was going to run out of room. Still, he pretended otherwise and kept adding more dirt to the piles that would eventually have to be moved. The problem was that when the dirt was on the ground, it was compacted. It expanded when it was excavated. The piles were a lot bigger than the holes were deep. It was either now or later. Reluctantly, he climbed up out of his hole and once again dug his shovel into precisely dug dirt. Myra's father got down on his hands and knees and closely examined each pig, tail, and snout. "These are the 2 finest pigs I have ever seen," he said at last. "How am I to decide? I only have 1 daughter." "Why not let Myra decide?" suggested Elya. "That is preposterous!" exclaimed Igor, expelling saliva as he spoke. "Myra is an empty-headed girl," said his father. "How could she possibly decide when I, her father, can't?" "She knows what she feels in her heart," said Elya. Myra's father rubbed his chin, and then he laughed and said, "Why not?" He slapped Elya on the back. "It doesn't matter to me. A pig is a pig." He summoned his daughter. Elya blushed when Myra entered the room. "Good afternoon, Myra," he said. She looked at him. "You're Elya, right?" she asked. "Myra," said her father, "Elya and Igor have each offered a pig for your hand in marriage. It doesn't matter to me. A pig is a pig, so I will let you make a choice. Whom do you wish to marry?" Myra looked confused. "You want me to decide?" "That's right, my blossom," said her father. "Gee, I don't know which pig weighs more." "They both weigh the same," said her father. "Golly," said Myra, "I guess I'd choose Elya. No Igor. No Elya. No Igor. Oh, I don't know. I think of a number between 1 and 10. I'll marry whomever guesses the closest number." "Okay, I'm ready." 10, Igor guessed Igor. Elya said nothing. "Elya, what number do you guess?" Elya didn't pick a number. "Marry Igor," he muttered. "You can keep my pig as a wedding present." All right, that's as far as we're going to read today. We'll finish chapter 7 tomorrow. Bye.